That year, Immortal Alliance Conference was a greater disaster than nearly any since its inception. Over 1,000 new talents from every sect had participated in the conference. Of the 4 great sects, the members of Donghua Monastery, who'd focused on supporting the barrier spell, had luckily been spared, while Huanhua Palace had suffered the greatest losses, to the tune of nearly 100 participants. Tóngxiāng Mountain had taken the least damage, with only 30 or so injured. The newcomers with low skill and meager cultivation largely hailed from the other assorted sects and clans. This was the group that had been hit the hardest and taken the most casualties. Getting your name on the gold-inscribed tablet should have been a joyous occasion, but this year many of the people listed on the tablet had perished in Juedi Gorge. Most heartbreaking of all was the first-ranked name high at the top of the list, a member of Tóngxiāng Mountain's Qingjing Peak and Shen Qingqiu's beloved disciple, Luo Binghe, deceased, his sword broken. This was to say nothing of the casualties among the cultivators who had joined the fray to give aid during the incident. In this battle, each sect had suffered major losses. A red ranking chart was delivered to Qingjing Peak. Quote, Luo Binghe, unquote, was written high at the top in first place, glittering in gold. Minfan walked in to report. Shizun, 10,000 spirit stones were delivered. What should be done with them? 10,000 spirit stones? Shen Qingqiu stared at him blankly. Why would they suddenly send so many spirit stones up the mountain? Shizun, have you forgotten? Minfan asked carefully. At the Immortal Alliance Conference, you, bet 5,000. Now Shen Qingqiu remembered. It was a bet he had placed on Luo Binghe. Yue Qingyuan had said that any losses would be his to pay, while Shen Qingqiu could keep any winnings for himself. Sure enough, Luo Binghe had made a good showing, and in the final hour, he had shot past the first and second-ranked Gong Yixiao and Liu Mingyan to perch at the head of the rankings, thereby earning his master double his initial investment. At the time, Shen Qingqiu had thought that profit was profit and that he might as well receive a consolation prize, but now he was at a bit of a loss. In the past, he had always given these things to Luo Binghe to handle, whether gift should be saved or whether it should be used to trade for something else, and if so, how to do so. He'd never had to worry about such things himself. Now, Minfan was asking him what to do. Shen Qingqiu thought for a while, then said, Put them away for now. Minfan was silent. He actually wanted to ask for more instruction, like, where should I put it? But his master's face really didn't look too good, so he was afraid to press for answers. He thought, it should be fine if I put them where Luo Binghe used to put things, and immediately withdrew. For many days, Qingjing Peak's disciples walked on eggshells, doing their best to avoid the elephant in the room, afraid of touching their master's sore spot. They all thought that, after a few days, things would eventually take a turn for the better. Then, after half a month had passed and Shen Qingqiu seemed to be gradually returning to normal, one day, right before mealtime, they suddenly heard Shen Qingqiu call Luo Binghe's name a few times from the bamboo house. With a thud, 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 Ning Yingying burst inside, giving Shen Qingqiu a scare. What are you doing? He asked. Charging in here so suddenly. It's unsightly for a lady to act so rough and undisciplined. Ning Yingying's eyes were red, like that of a little bunny's. Shizun, whatever you want to eat, I'll make it for you. Shen Qingqiu coughed. No need. Go out and play. Shizun. Ning Yingying stamped her foot. Even if our law is gone, you still have the rest of your disciples. You're so out of your mind with grief. We disciples are worried to death. Shen Qingqiu would never have expected someone to use the words out of your mind to describe him. Actually, now that he'd reached the core formation stage, it didn't matter if he ate or not. He'd just had a sudden craving and wanted to eat some snacks, and he had for a moment forgotten that he'd already thrown Luo Binghe into the endless abyss. How did that count as being out of his mind? Shen Qingqiu opened his mouth, 100 words of protest ready to spill forth. But seeing Ning Yingying nearly about to cry from anxiety, he hurriedly went to comfort her instead. Only after he swore solemnly that his cause just now had been a mere slip of the tongue did she calm down. After coaxing her back outside, Shen Qingqiu let out a long sigh. He suddenly felt that this little miss, who in the original novel had always been pampered and childish, only capable of getting into trouble and being a burden, had in fact grown up a bit. After all, she was one of Luo Binghe's harem. She was the one who was supposed to be clawing at the ground, wailing to the heavens, but instead she'd come to comfort her master. Had his instruction actually had some effect? Either way, things couldn't go on like this any longer. Clearly, Shen Qingqiu was the one who'd raised that little lamb of a protagonist. So why did it seem like the protagonist had been the one looking after him? He was scaring his disciples, putting on the act of a grieving widow whose husband had just died. Hadn't it only been a few days since he'd last seen that child? No! Ah! Shen Qingqiu mentally slapped himself. Who are you calling a grieving widow? Whose husband died? That's not something you should say. You're really getting worse by the day. A negative mindset produces nothing good. You deserve a slap. But perhaps because Luo Binghe had left, he really was a bit lonely, especially when he thought about how 5 years from now, when they reunited, a relationship that had once been that of a compassionate teacher and a filial disciple or something, would become defined by veiled murderous intent and daggers hidden within smiles. Shen Qingqiu had brought the broken pieces of Zhen Yang's sword back with him. He messily dug a hole behind Qingjing Peak's bamboo house, erected a tablet, and set up a sword mound. When others saw him lost in thought as he faced that empty tablet, they thought that he was reminiscing about his beloved disciple, and they could only sigh. What a deep master and disciple bond! Fate toys with us all, they thought. Only Shen Qingqiu knew that the one he was mourning was in truth within the sword mound, buried underneath and never to return. That youth as warm as the sun. What truly broke him and caused him to weep at the heavens was that, after several days of silence, the system sent him a message truly devoid of all humanity. Congratulations! You have successfully completed the key quest. The legend begins, Luo Binghe's fall and rebirth. Reward, protagonist satisfaction points, plus 10,000. Before Shen Qingqiu even had the chance to be pleased, it continued. However, due to extraordinary circumstances, a new point value has been activated, Luo Binghe's heartbreak points. Due to excessively high heartbreak level, protagonist satisfaction points have been reset to 0. Please continue to work hard. Reset to 0, reset to 0, reset to 0. Those 3 large words looped endlessly within Shen Qingqiu's mind. What the hell are these heartbreak points? Didn't I tell you not to randomly activate strange point values? Fuck off. So Luo Binghe really is your darling son. Even his heartbreak gets a point value of its own. Years of slaving away at the system's every command, and he was back to square one in a single night. Oh, being a villain was a true misery. Grievances enough to fill the ocean. Being so unhappy, naturally, Shen Qingqiu had to go take it out on someone else. So, he had Mingfan deliver a message inviting Shang Qinghua to the bamboo house. Shang Qinghua placed down the porcelain tea bowl and smiled. Shimasha Brothers' Qingjing Peak is truly elegant and secluded. Even this mere tea bowl is very exquisite. Such sophistication truly makes Qinghua feel ashamed. Qingjing Peak and Anding Peak had always minded their respective businesses. Shen Qingqiu was reserved and aloof, and very rarely took the initiative to invite guests. But this time he had actually sent a disciple to Anding Peak with an invitation. Shang Jinghua was unable to discern what he wanted, but no one slaps a smiling face, so he started out with compliments. At least that couldn't be a misstep. Shen Qingqiu dismissed the disciples, closed the door, and sighed. Marshal brother, with these words of yours, everything I see begins to bring up old memories. Every plank, every dish in this Qingjing bamboo house was personally arranged by that disciple of mine, he said. Shang Jinghua said nothing but sighed along with him. Lord Marshal Nephew was a heroic youth. Such a pity. Those demons brought such disaster upon us. They are truly hateful. The whole world mourns with us. Shen Marshal brother, my condolences. If Shang Marshal brother truly felt it was a pity, this tragedy would not have occurred, Shen Qingqiu said faintly. At this, Shang Jinghua stiffened. After a moment, he seamlessly smoothed things over with a smile. What does Shen Marshal brother mean by that? Is he rebuking our Anding Peak for inadequate administration? If so, I truly apologize. Shen Qingqiu refilled his teacup. How was it inadequate? You clearly overexerted yourself. You even found demonic creatures like the ghost-head spiders, the female resentment demon, and bone eagles, none of which ever entered the human realm of their own volition. How could this martial brother rebuke you for inadequacy? Pig Lord Shen, to make such outrageous accusations! Shang Jinghua shot to his feet, his face rapidly changing colors. Shen Qingqiu put his hand on Shang Jinghua's shoulder. Why is Shang Marshal brother getting so excited? He asked solemnly. Let's sit down and talk. Let me say something. Do you dare respond? Why wouldn't I? I have a clear conscience. Why would I fear a false accusation? With a sneer, Shang Jinghua brushed away his hand. Aeroplane shooting towards the sky, asked Shen Qingqiu. It was like a bolt of lightning from the heavens had struck Shang Jinghua in the head, rendering him unable to speak. After a long time, he managed to stammer out. How do you know my ID? In that moment, it was like Shen Qingqiu had also been burnt to a crisp by the aforementioned bolt of lightning. He had only wanted to study Shang Jinghua's reaction to this name to determine if he had also read Proud Immortal Demon Wei. But given his reaction, he wasn't just a reader, was he? After 3 long seconds, Shen Qingqiu jumped on him. It's you! How could I not know your ID after reading your entire fucking novel? If you hadn't let something slip when Mo Beijun appeared, I really would have never known what hole you really crawled out of, Great Master. The moment Shang Jinghua had seen Mo Beijun suddenly appear, he actually had let out a what the fuck. At that time, Shen Qingqiu hadn't heard him particularly clearly, so he hadn't paid it any mind. But afterward, the more he thought about it, the more suspicious he'd grown. As the one who'd masterminded the event, or the logistics of it, Shang Jinghua was subject to irresistible pressure of the plot. Yet, he hadn't released the black moon rhinoceros python that should have starred in numerous scenes. This was suspicious in itself, but if you considered the possibility that he had failed to do this intentionally in order to hinder the development of the plot, to sever the tragedy of Luo Binghe's fall into the endless abyss at its roots, it made sense. The two stared at each other, speechless, competing for who was the most stunned. Digging plot holes and not filling them, Shen Qingqiu finally bursted out. Foreshadowing gone to waste, landmines all over the place, the writing style of an elementary schooler. If you're going to write a stallion novel, then write a proper stallion novel. Don't fool around writing trash. Hey, I'm also the victim here, Shang Qinghua said slowly. At the end of the day, I'm still the author. Even if I didn't transmigrate into the protagonist, I should at least have transmigrated into the role of the system in itself, right? But all of a sudden, I try to plug in a cord, I get electrocuted, and the system assigns me a character at random, and I end up as cannon fodder. Still better than me, Shen Qinqiu sneered. After you're exposed as a spy, Mo Beijun kills you outright to silence you. At least, it's a straightforward death. Don't you remember the state I'll be in after I get carved up by Luo Binghe? Oi, you haven't transmigrated here for that long, Shang Qinghua countered. Right upon rebirth, you already had the rank of a great master, right? I transmigrated into an infant, a childhood where I was destitute and miserable, and years as a disrespected outer disciple. Have you really gone through more than I have? This competition had no winner, because, in the end, it was 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Shang Qinghua sighed. Wow, I've actually met a reader. Must be fate, must be fate. One of the 4 joys in life is meeting an old friend in a foreign place. So, what is your Zhongdian ID? Maybe we were old acquaintances. Peerless cucumber, said Shen Qinqiu. Shang Qinghua thought for a while. I vaguely remember you. Weren't you especially vicious in one of those threads that was demanding that I castrate the villain? It was when you, when the original Shen Qinqiu wanted to do, to Ning Ying Ying. At first, Shen Qinqiu emphatically said nothing. I refuse to believe you only remember that one thing. Don't dwell on the past, he said. More importantly, he had a resolution. Enough blabbering. I want to have a real discussion with you today, because after the Immortal Alliance conference, I suddenly had an idea. Perhaps it can solve our shared problem. Shang Qinghua froze. Oh, for real? Only there were still 2 little conditions missing. Success or failure depended on one action. He would see if Shang Qinghua, this fellow countryman, would be of help.